It's invaluable for every farmer to think about maintaining that water in the landscape. You can't just harness water for tomorrow or the day after. You've got to try and hang on to it for a fair bit longer so that when you go into a dry time, you've got a reserve there. This is what our neighbours downstream not only like to see the quality of the water, but also the regular constancy of the flow. They've got more water for their stock, there's more water for the environment. Everyone downstream are the main beneficiaries of it. My name's Charlie Maslin. I've been a farmer on the Monaro for the last 40 years or so. This is a family property that we came to in 1911. My great-grandfather bought it, then my grandfather was here, and then my father. It's basically a grazing operation, sheep and cattle. Gunningrah is in the part of the treeless plains of the Monaro. There's a valley that runs down through the middle, which is the Cambalong Creek. Every stream on the place is pretty majorly incised, down maybe a metre or so. Some at the back of the place in lighter soils go down maybe 8 to 10 metres, so differing levels of degradation. I came back in the early 80s, and I think I've seen the full variation of seasons through the years. The main way of fighting droughts in the early years, when we had no water reticulated around the property, our main source of water was the Cambalong Creek. And so more and more paddocks would be opened up to the Cambalong so that the stock could water. The central part of the property, where the creek was, had pretty intense stock pressure. For that, the whole corridor was just really denuded of any perennial plants for a good 100 metres or so. About the mid-90s, we went through a dry period, 4 years, and it was a pretty extreme dry, and that's when we started to look at different grazing alternatives. I went off and did a grazing for profit school in about 1996. After doing the course, then we decided to give it a go to change the grazing. And once we started to improve the ground cover there, from 40% to 80%, the infiltration rate doubled. It went from sort of taking 30 minutes to go in to 15 minutes. We could see the change with less runoff. We could see the plant species broadening, the ground cover improving, but occasionally with a bigger storm, water was still going pretty fast. Water was running off, streams were continuing to erode. When we got a storm, there was nothing there really to hold it. Any water we were getting in the catchment, we wanted to hold it there for as long as possible. So anything we can do to slow down that flow, anything we can do to get more moisture into the soil, we need it there for the plants to slowly make its way into the aquifers so that the streams flow for much longer. Yeah, being a bit impatient, I suppose, wanting to see more change and knowing the stuff that Peter Andrews had done and what Malone had done, rather than wait probably 50 years for it to really start to lift, we wanted to speed up the process of trying to repair some of those streams.
I'm Jono Forrest. I've been to Charlie's a few times over the years. The first couple of times I came, it was the observation of the level of ground cover here on the Monaro compared to other areas, and abundance of water within the landscape as well. Quite often what we see is degradation of systems, so incised creek and other waterways. And what happens then is you get a much faster flow of water through that channel, which leads to ongoing degradation and more erosion. And so what we are aiming to achieve with the natural infrastructure is providing some intervention that is going to lift the bed of that structure to a higher level and slow the flow of the water through the channel. And over time, that will enable plants to grow and greater amounts of water being held in the system for longer. By incorporating the natural infrastructure into the system, we're providing an opportunity to catch sediment as the water flows, and in the process then build the profile of the stream up. And what we tend to see then is greater filtration through other parts of the landscape. So you're not only slowing down the flow of the water within that channel, you're actually allowing it to dissipate into other parts of the landscape as well.
Now we've moved up to the western side of the property, and we're standing actually in one of the small streams that runs for about 8 k's through us, back into the Cambalong. One stream flows in from behind me. There have been no structures put into the stream at all, and there's still quite a lot of sediment coming through. The main stream flows up to my left. We get very little sediment coming this way. All the sediment that has filled up this particular site has come from this unprotected valley. It's looking pretty dry at the moment. We're at the end of a pretty dry winter and no rain for a while. but it's a pretty interesting site. There's been quite a lot happen. This site was really deeply incised and there was a lot of sediment coming through, and nowhere on the property did that sediment drop out. And so we put the structure in that kept this sediment in this landscape going any further. So that's where the wall goes across. This structure was built with an excavator. The wall was probably a couple of hours work, just loosely track rolled in, a pipe put through the far end. The material's taken out below, basically below the water level, so that if a flood event did happen, everything was reasonably well protected. Then we let nature take its course. The water filling up slowed down the water and the sediment dropped out. You weren't able to drive a motorbike through where I'm standing. It was a deep incision. Where I'm standing, there's a little bit of pipe here right at my feet, and that's the top of 2.5 metres now. It's roughly where the sediment had to come up to get back to where it was prior to being eroded. And I've got this stick here today, and that's roughly where the bottom of the stream once was. It's about 2.5 metres deep, 35-40 metres long, and it's about 15 metres wide. I thought it might take 30 years for it to happen, but it's because we've got a fairly active gully behind us, it's taken probably about 15 years, I'd imagine, and it's filled up in that time. So we've moved from a site at the back of the place. This little stream, it flows for about 8 k's. Most of it is incised basically between 1 to 2 metres. Banks have been pretty stable with grass. With this one, it was one of the first ones we tried, and we put in about 20 small structures with an excavator in 2 days, so it was about an hour's work each. This one here, it's not a lot to see there at the moment, but where the post is where the wall went across. Any rock that was dug out was put at the back of the wall and soil in front of it, and they pretty quickly grassed up. And what we've done with the structures is kick it to the right one place, kick it to the left the next place, and get a bit of induced meandering happening. But we found that with the moisture that was in the creek areas, once the stock were taken out for reasonable lengths of time, the regeneration of grasses in the riparian areas were pretty quick, and they started to heal pretty quickly. As you look down the stream, you can see where the reeds are growing, and there's basically reeds growing where each of the structures are, and so when it floods, that tends to take quite a lot of the energy out of the water and help sediment drop out. So we want to retain that fertility and that soil in the landscape, and doing the intervention certainly helps with that. In the wetter years, it flows over the 8 kilometres, but in some of the drier years, it was actually only flowing in a very small part in the middle. And what we've done by putting all these interventions in is to try and lengthen the bit where the stream will flow well. Hopefully we can turn this into being a longer stream for a much longer period of time. We're situated on the Cambalong Creek, which is the main stream that flows through the middle of the property. The streams were on before flow in about 1 kilometre up from where we are now, and the first site we went on to feeds in about 3 or 4 k's downstream. There was a bit of water that was flowing into the top end of the place where the streams start before it gets into any of the interventions, and you can see there's plenty of sediment in there. And by comparison, that's a sample of what it looks like down here at the lower points. But basically the water quality by the time it gets to here is miles better, and it's purely the intervention, the slowing down, the filtration, and giving everything time to settle.
Thinking about drought resilience, farmers have a really important role to play in terms of how they manage their landscapes and how they're functioning. And with relatively low rainfall, retaining water in our landscapes is really important, not only for productivity but also overall environmental health. And that's why it's really important for farmers to work together as a catchment community to build that drought resilience at that landscape scale.
Once we changed the grazing and putting all these interventions in, we definitely grow quite a lot more feed. Animal health has certainly improved a lot. We went from having a really variable profit cycle in line with the variability of the rainfall, and as we changed the grazing and didn't fight it so much, generally our profits were nowhere near as variable and also rising. The thing that's really important when at the end of the dry period is when it does rain, you want those plants to still be there to hold the moisture, to let it in, and for something there to start growing. And if you do look after it going into the drought, it looks after you when you come out.
Farmers like Charlie, we often term as a catchment champion. So there's somebody within the catchment community who has done work on their own property and seen the changes that it's made. So for other farmers, that's quite encouraging because it gives them the confidence of going, well, if one farmer's done this, I can get on board and I can do it myself.
Over the catchment, there's probably about 15 or so major landholders, and I've been in touch with all of them. We had a preliminary meeting with Maloon. Pete Hazel and Jono came down. Everyone was interested in it. Still pretty early days, but we're looking at trying to speed up that process and get something happening. Start small and just give it a try in a small gully, high up in the place, in the catchment, and just see what happens. And just looking and observing, it's not only easy to do, it's really satisfying to see the changes that happen. It gives you a great buzz.